Hello, and welcome to episode number 267 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me, I have two of those in Pat Evans and Matthew Waters. You guys can find all their work over at LegalSportsReport.com, and we will run down, talk about some stuff that went on in Baltimore that's somewhat interesting. We will see what the sports books have to say about this super chalky sports season so far of the big events, that's for sure. We'll get the state roundup like we always do with Pat, what's going on in Alabama, Oklahoma, and even Hawaii. And then we'll end things. Can't seem to get through a week without talking about these prediction markets, so we'll definitely do that. But Matt, let's kick things off here with first our disclaimer. We are not financial advisors. We are not promoting and or telling you to do anything with your money whatsoever. We are just reporting the news here. Let's talk some stocks.
Yeah, that's so true. And if you did want my opinion, Matt, I still wouldn't be buying anyway, but that is neither here. Yeah, we had an interesting message go out on Truth Social Wednesday afternoon at 1:18 saying that most of the tariffs that we've been talking about for however many days now would be going through a 90-day pause. And naturally, that had the market and people interested in buying in the market very exciting. And it is still yet to be seen if anybody actually got value from buying. Of course, these tariff trade talks are not over. We still have it with China, so it's still a very murky situation. But obviously, it did present an enticing opportunity to buy for a lot of people. We listed, I think it was 20 gaming stocks that just saw really, really great volume and a nice pop. Now, we're looking at, I think, only 6 of those that I looked at yesterday are actually above where they were post April 2nd when all those tariffs were originally announced. So a lot of people still have a lot of clawing to do to get back to where they were. But this was definitely a positive for the market for sure, positive for a lot of the stocks out there. And it gives these the executives at these companies a little bit of breathing room. I think we have earnings period coming up where they have to get into all their financials and whatnot, and there will be a lot of questions from analysts, and there's only so much they can control with their stock price, right? And if you're left having to answer questions about when is the price going to come back, and who knows what's going to happen with all of these tariff talks, that's a tough situation to be in. So I think a lot of people are happy after what happened yesterday, and a lot of happy green arrows across the board for sure.
And then even before that, we were getting some news coming out just about Flutter in general, correct?
Yeah, Flutter and IGT, actually. I know we usually talk online here. IGT is mostly a slot machine maker, but they are certainly involved in sports betting and online gaming as well. They were both named as 2 out of 4 stocks they Stifel recommended to own in case there is a recession. The other 2 were Royal Caribbean and One Spa World. And Flutter is one of those companies that I mentioned, Matt, that now is above where they were on April 2nd. So they didn't take that big of a hit from all this. And it's easy to see why, right? I mean, Flutter, the parent company of FanDuel, Flutter, is like everywhere almost. I mean, they're a beast in Europe. They're a beast in Australia. They just have diversified revenue. And so one thing can't throw off their entire business. And that is what you love as an investor. You can, if one thing is just burning to hell over here, but everything is still kind of okay over there, everybody will still be happy. And that is certainly the truth about Flutter and IGT as well. IGT is quite diversified. So both of those stocks got a nice little round of praise from Stifel, and the stock seems to be showing that.
So Pat, I, a lifelong gambler, but never really dabbled in the stock market. Shockingly enough, wasn't one of the things that I got going. But then, listen, COVID happens. You get bored. You get into trading cards. You get into like all that. You get into NFTs. You get into whatever. Well, I look at the stock. I looked at the stocks, right? And so I have the most undiversified portfolio in the history of mankind, right? So all the gaming stocks and all the airline stocks just tanked, right? Because it's like, oh my God, we can't fly. And like, oh my God, we can't go gamble. And I'm like, okay, we'll eventually fly and we'll eventually gamble again, So I only have airline and gaming stocks that all just bottomed out during COVID. And I'm kind of like, hey, I feel pretty good about this right now. Like, I mean, people look at me and go like, dude, you have like 2 different types of stocks. I'm like, yeah, I'm a very, very, very uneducated investor when it comes to all of that stuff. But yeah, so when I see stuff like that, I'm kind of like, well, that's about the only news that's good for me ever in a stock market whenever they talk about the gaming stocks with all of the stuff. But, again, it's one of those things where we look and, with the deal with Flutter, it wasn't available, for the longest time over here. We knew whenever that it was going to be a behemoth whenever it came around. And I know it seems like we've talked about it multiple times on this podcast, but listen, credit where credit's due. I know people think that all we do is come on here and talk about sometimes the negative news when it comes to the gaming industry, but Flutter, an absolute behemoth that has come in and continued through all of their different moves, just seems to be continuing making the right moves over and over again. And not shocking to me to see that that's a recommended stock for sure.
Absolutely. No, not at all. I mean, just along with Matt's point of them being an international behemoth, they controlled America in the realm. So it's like, why wouldn't you, if you're going to have an American gaming stock, why wouldn't it be that one? It's perfect for that. A couple things that are off topic. Matt, I really want to know why Royal Caribbean. Did you look into that? Because that blows my mind. Because I've always heard gambling in recessions might go up.
Yeah.
But do cruises? I didn't know that.
I was surprised to see that. I was surprised to see that too. That kind of was the argument in the note that cruises just tend to do well. People still take their cruises. One Spa World is actually involved in cruises as well. So Steve-O is quite bullish on the cruise environment in a recession.
That's fascinating. And then, yeah, Matt, my dad's always said the stock market is just legalized gambling. So maybe you need to dabble more and get outside of that strategy that you've got going, because it's bold.
I'm telling you, yeah. I mean, and Matt, I'm glad that you cleared that up about One Spa World, because I'm like, okay, so people buy spas during that,
right?
That seems like incredibly odd. But okay, that makes more sense. It's just like
they're in spa services. Yes,
they get on boats to forget about life for a while, and then they come back and whatever. So I get that for sure. Pat, there's an interesting story over on Legal Sports Report about just the city of Baltimore and a couple of the gaming companies that we can talk about here.
Yeah, so the city of Baltimore, city council, and Mayor Brandon Scott have sued DraftKings and FanDuel for what they call deceptive and unfair practices. Basically, it has to do with how the bonusing attracts the customers in, and then how they use the data behind it to kind of milk more money out of it. Of course, this is all alleged. We're not lawyers. We're not analyzing this at all. But certainly interesting. The law firm that is behind it told us that it is just DraftKings and FanDuel for now, but it certainly could open up to other operators, and that this is a national issue, not just in Baltimore. So it is a interesting thing that could, widen in scope or, go national or something, but just a fun little issue right now.
Yeah, Matt, it's a deal where, again, like we always say, just like we did with the stocks, we're not lawyers, so we don't know exactly how all we can say is there will be lawyers. That's what we always say.
Yeah, and you know what? We may not be lawyers, but at Legal Sports Report, we do have a lawyer. We have Alan Wilmot. He's been freelancing for us, and he heads the Heitner Legal. He heads their gaming department at the law firm. So looking forward to see what Alan has to say about it. That piece is coming. Basically, a high level view of what he's saying is that, maybe there are some good points made in the lawsuit when it comes to different problem gambling issues and responsible gambling issues. But certainly this is the type of issue that is not handled at the city level. And Alan's actually going to be diving into all of the regulations that the Maryland Lottery Gaming Control Agency handles, and just how that fits into what the lawsuit's saying. So it's we'll have an interesting piece about it online. But yeah, it's what I took away from this is that the filing is a good resource for people that are looking at ways to improve responsible gambling around the industry. It's a lot of the points that were made in it is just what happens in the industry. Bonusing happens in the industry. It's something that is not going to ever go away completely. But when you look at some international jurisdictions that have been gambling longer than us and have since corrected some of the mistakes that they made in those first years of gambling, it does make me wonder why we still do some of the things that we do in the United States. Obviously, it's made harder by the fact that we have 50 plus different jurisdictions
Mhm.
that we're dealing with for the US, as opposed to, if the UK wants to change something, it's England and maybe Ireland when it comes to some different rules. So, yeah, this was a weird one. I don't think anybody expected to see this. You can't get mad at city councilors wanting to protect their constituents, but
Mhm.
this, to me personally, this doesn't seem to be the best route ahead. So we'll see where it goes from here. Who knows if it completely disappears? Who knows if maybe it turns into a bigger conversation for Maryland and their operators? We'll just have to wait and see.
I
If
will
you
note
are, oh
that
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
legal sports report is cited in the lawsuit.
Oh, well, look at that. See, that's how you know you've made it whenever you get cited in a lawsuit, but the lawsuit isn't against you. Like that, that's good. That's good. When you're a resource when the lawsuit is not actually against you, that's good right there. For those of you watching over on YouTube, appreciate that. You can go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're just listening to the audio version, as we always say, please subscribe, rate, review. If you are watching over on YouTube, we did not coordinate this. Yes, we are recording this while the Masters opening round is going on. We all have on, we got some green. I'm wearing an actual little Masters polo here. We did not coordinate this. We all just showed up and decided, hell, we were going to do our support on our own. So yes, that was a fun little coincidence as we stepped up to the microphone. And I have no idea if y'all wore green because it was Masters or you just love the color green.
No,
this is what was clean. But I also enjoy the Masters, but this was what was clean.
I do enjoy the Masters as well, but as a Michigan State grad, I love green, and then I need to wear my panda hat sometimes.
Yeah, so you described it. Yeah, good stuff right there. All right. So, Matt, this is something that we hit on at the end of the NFL season when we started to look, and books were talking about just how chalky a lot of things had gone down in the NFL season. There was a lot of favorites that won. When favorites win, that also means that money line parlays get home and all kinds of stuff that happens. Same game parlays end up hitting at a little more rapid rate than they normally do. And so, okay, you get to the NFL season, they'll make it back, right? Then March Madness comes along. And as you guys know, as when it was all said and done, yes, a number one seed won, but there was also 4 number one seeds in the Final Four and 4 teams that were at the top of the rankings all season long. And so people that were paying even the slightest bit of attention to college basketball knew how good these teams were and were very likely highly bet. And so when we get here to the end of all of this, Matt, I mean, look, the lights are still going to turn on at the books, but the sports have certainly not been cooperating. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, and if we go back a couple of years, this certainly is a bigger problem for these operators. But one of the thing that a lot of operators have been doing, and the bigger guys, the FanDuels, DraftKings, BetMGM, Caesars, they're doing it very well now, is they have a stable margin that they expect to get out of sports betting every year or every quarter. And how they do that is through those parlays, by making the parlay products better, by adding higher revenue products that people tend to engage with more, so that if something like this happens with favorites coming in and just stomping feet, they're not down the river without a paddle. The NFL season was just horrible for the books, and everybody still put up a positive number when it came to their profit. And so we're seeing that this is it's kind of proving the resiliency of these books. When legal sports betting was when it was legalizing around the United States after PASPA, a lot of the talking points factored in on and obviously this was lobbyists trying to keep tax rates down, but the operators are almost coming hat in hand to the regulators and legislators and saying, look, this is just, we only get 5% margins out of this business. And out of that 5%, we have to pay data suppliers. We have to pay this and that. Some people listened, some people didn't, obviously.
Right.
But the important thing here for these operators is that now they're able to squeeze a little bit more out of it. And it's not just by making the odds worse. That was always the concern, that odds would just have to be worse. People would just have to be juiced out of their brains in order for so many sports books to survive and make money. And now we see that with these improved margins, these structural hold margins that they're building into their business, Then we also see iGaming coming along. Not many states right now, but even in the couple of states that it's in, it's a bulldog. It's easier for these companies to sustain a hit like this that a couple years ago may have really hurt some of the big guys.
Absolutely, Pat. It's not just the 1 seeds that all make it to the Final Four, but the 2 seeds, the 3 seeds all make it deep into the tournament. There was no Cinderella at all this year, and I've actually talked to a couple of sportsbook operators just to kind of get their opinion on just the industry and in the sport kind of from a macro level here. And they said they might actually have to change the way that they book, because with college sports trending the way that they're trending, we're probably not going to get teams come out of nowhere anymore in college football and college basketball and things like that. If anything, we become even more chalky with all of this, because not only with NIL, where the bigger schools with the more money can go pay the bigger athletes more money, but also with an open transfer portal and kids don't have to sit out a year. You go to a mid-major, you kind of slip through the cracks, right? Like you didn't get recruited. You're a mid-major kid. You ball out. Then you go to a Duke or a Florida or an Auburn or a whatever and stuff. And so they were even talking about maybe moving forward in these future markets and the way that they book these things. They might even have to change it up just a tad, because we're likely to see more of this than we have ever seen before moving forward.
No, I believe that. I mean, even just looking at my Michigan State Spartans and just, old school Tom Izzo being, hesitant to go hard in the portal. He did just pick up a pretty good 6'7" guy. So I'm not, I'm happy about that. But it's like even a behemoth in basketball like Michigan State, I'm kind of looking at it as a fan going, oh man, they're going to be hard up to compete with some of these big time number 1 guys. So it is just kind of crazy how much this is changing college football and basketball. Again, I think the parlays, I think to Matt's point, will save a lot of these things. Cause I mean, even just adding, all the 1s and 2s to make the Elite 8, still you're going to get a 3 seed in there, and so even no matter, I think maybe as it gets even chalkier, bettors are going to get maybe even more ambitious with their parlays, and we'll see what happens there. And instead of milking out the 1x1s as we always talk about.
And to piggyback off of that, Pat, when bettors win, bettors continue to bet. Yeah. And so it was interesting that the DraftKings had reported that their football handle for this year was higher than expected. And that's what you're going to get when people are making their bucks.
Which is more chances for them to lose.
Right.
Which, one of the things that I think, though, and I'll have to do the comparative numbers next year because we don't know how it all play out, but I think what we might see is not necessarily the shortening of the prices of the favorites, but maybe the lengthening of the prices of the longer shots, in which you try to draw more action on those guys, understanding that those bets are like less likely now to cash, right, than they were in years past. Again, we'll have to see. That's just my guess. This is all whatever. We'll have to see how it all plays out a year from now, but that's kind of my guess as to how they go about it, where it's like, you know what? A team that might have been 50 is now more like 70. A team that might have been 30 is more like 40 or 45. And like you get some of the action lured away from some of the favorites there at the top into some of these longer shot guys. Pat, it's our state roundup time here. We are going to talk Hawaii, Alabama, and Oklahoma.
Yeah. So Hawaii, this is the Cinderella story of the year. If we're talking, March Madness and just going straight chalk. Like, this is an actual Cinderella story. I mean, Hawaii's always been one of those states that
that's like a 14 seed, right? I mean, like,
right,
we did not see this coming like at all. Like,
no, and it's one of 2 states without any form of gambling. Like, it's insane. And that this is the furthest it had gone before. Sports betting legislation had gone before was passing 1 committee. This year it's passed the House. Now it's passed the Senate. The Senate had to make some changes, so it does have to be concurred in the House again. But they just reinstituted the 10% tax rate and license fees that were in the original bill. So it doesn't seem like there should be too much trouble there. And the governor has indicated that he's open to signing it. So this is kind of a mind-blowing Cinderella story for gaming legislation, which is a fun way to put that. But I mean, out of the blue.
Yeah.
Just
that's kind of for us, right, that live in the bubble. Like, it is an interesting deal because we don't normally see stuff just kind of happen without there being some sort of smoke or whatever and all that, like where we're kind of like, even the stuff that seems like somewhat of less than likely to happen, we can at least point to saying, okay, well, there was a path to get in there. But this one really was just kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those states that it barely moved in the past, and there was always lots of opposition. I mean, you'd think a state like Georgia, which, we just finished the session with no discussion on it, which had lots of discussion and came close in years past. Like, that would have made sense to just randomly, all of a sudden, just gain a bunch of momentum and pass. Even Alabama, which, again, just, ended, or it hasn't ended the session, but they declared gambling dead. It's just a crazy little run here. And of course, it's not finished yet. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
The House could all of a sudden decide, well, this isn't what we wanted. Politics is politics and legislation is legislation, and lots of things can happen. But again, just a mind-blowing, exciting kind of development for the state. Up to 4 sports books in Hawaii would be allowed. So there's that. Alabama, as I just mentioned, the Senate President Pro Tem said, nope, this is dead. Gambling is done, which is kind of wild. I mean, this is something, it is one of 5 states without even a lottery. They have a bunch of weird bingo halls and some racetracks, but they've been trying for 25 years or so to get a lottery, and just recently in the last couple of years started trying to incorporate sports betting and casinos into it. And it, one year it passed the Senate. The House didn't have the appetite. The next year the House passes it. The Senate didn't have an appetite for basically the thing they had just passed a year or two prior. This year, the House said it has to start in the Senate. The Senate kind of dabbled in it. We had Senator Greg Albritton say, I'm trying to count the votes. We're a few votes short before I introduce something. He puts a proposal out, and that same week is when the Senate leadership says, nope, this is dead. And so then this week, Albritton comes out and says, well, this issue's dead for 20 years, another 2 decades. Like, this is not going anywhere. So it does not sound promising in the long run for Alabama for any sort of gambling legislation. Of course, that could just be hyperbole, and he could be, just trying to set things up for next year. Who knows? But not good in Alabama. Where else were we talking about?
Oklahoma.
I don't remember now. Oklahoma.
Yes.
Another one of those crazy states that just, can get some momentum going, and then everything falls apart. The tribes and Governor Kevin Stitt have a terrible working relationship, almost none, since he tried to amend a gaming compact back in 2020 to include sports betting. Most of the tribes in the state didn't like that. It was ruled illegal by the Attorney General. Since then, they've been trying to get it working. One bill that gives the tribes online exclusivity passed over to the Senate. A Senate bill that gives online sports betting to the Oklahoma City passed into the House. Both are kind of still working along, seeing what's happening, but Stitt has come out and said he will veto anything that comes off. He does not like the bills moving through the legislature. Would there be the overrides in either chamber? Probably not. It doesn't seem like, because there's still plenty of people who are in Stitt's camp. So Oklahoma's not looking super promising. And then, there's a couple other states, too, that have just kind of passed through. And Arkansas and what was the other state, Matt? I forget. Just said no to iCasino legislation. So there's just not a lot of movement besides Hawaii in terms of gambling legislation. Wow, that's a mouthful. Woo! There we go.
We'll obviously continue to keep you updated on all these states whenever any news comes out. Of course, all the full written stuff over at LegalSportsReport.com. Matt, I wanted to kind of just a little discussion here at the end of this to wrap things up, put a bow on this episode where, we can't go an episode, it seems like, without talking about these prediction markets. And I think rightfully so, right? Especially when you look over at LSR and you see the type of numbers that these things continue to put up. Yeah,
Pat, by the way, that was Maine.
That is Maine, yes. Sorry, I talk about so many states, I get lost, and many of them run together. And
sorry, people of Maine. Sorry, people. Everyone listen to this. I know we
especially
have fans.
Eric.
Yes, I know we have fans in Maine. Sorry about that. Yes, it's nothing against you guys. Promise you. Yes.
But Chalky in total volume on March Madness, men and women, they did more than 500 million, Matt, and that's a lot. We didn't know what to expect, right? But we got like 412 million on the men, and then the rest of that, I think just short of 92 million, was on the women. That's huge. That's like a sixth of what the AGA said that they expected on betting for March Madness this year. They had a $3.1 billion estimate. And when they made that estimate, I don't know that they necessarily had 500 million in mind coming from these prediction markets. it's kind of wild how it's going here, right? And then we just get the news out of Nevada this week that Chalky actually shows that it's likely going to win when it comes to these cease and desist letters that are coming at the state level, but Chalky and the CFTC are at the federal level, which it makes it a little hard for these states to come in and say don't do this when you have the big daddy federal law behind you saying no, I'm allowed to do this. And I mean we had essentially sports betting in all 50 states for March Madness, and we are not going to see this slow down if this is allowed to continue. There's no way that everybody will not want to get in on this, because now it's opened up to California and Texas and Florida. I mean, those are just huge markets that everybody would do a heck of a lot to get into. We saw how many millions were spent trying to get into California just a few years ago, and those millions were being spent even when they knew they were probably going to lose. So what are they going to do now? We know that DraftKings has an application pending with the CFTC. What happens if the CFTC comes through and says, this isn't sports betting and it can continue? It's going to be wild, and I don't know that anybody had this on their bingo card this year.
Yeah, I mean, Pat, when we look at this, I think what this really does for me when you see this type of number is shows you the appetite for people going and seeking out how they can try to get some money down on stuff, because listen, I am the target demo 100% for this. Like, I am not getting flooded with ads. Like, I'm not every time I open up social media getting targeted with a Chalky ad or whatever. And I didn't get somehow mysteriously added to some sort of email list where I'm getting bombarded with all this stuff. So, I mean, like, this is happening either word of mouth or people just going and really finding a way that they can get down money that they feel comfortable doing, that they feel is legal, that they don't feel like, going to the side, the guy on the street corner with a bookie and or doing stuff offshore. And so that is the craziest thing to me about this, where it's the people in California and Texas and Georgias and Alabamas and maybe even Utahs, who knows, of the world, that are going out there and like looking for ways that they can bet on sports. And that's the only way that you can describe the sheer number that is attached to what Chalky's doing.
It is wild, and I would love to see a breakdown of this, where it's coming from. Like, is how much of that was in California? That would be wild to see. I doubt they'll break that out. But yeah, to your point, I mean, outside of my circle, even inside my circle, I don't know who knows what Chalky is. So it is wild that people are finding it and then kind of determining that it is legal versus an offshore site. Or maybe there isn't. Maybe there's who knows what the mind work is going on in people's minds when they're looking at this. But it's wild. And it could be kind of similar to you and hopping on the stock exchanges during COVID. Maybe people are saying, oh, I can't bet on DraftKings, but I'm here in California and I want to do something. I'm sitting on my butt watching March Madness. How do I do it? And they somehow find Chalky. All these things, I don't know how they're finding it, to your point, but they are. And it does still make you wonder about all the offshore sports books and what they're doing in Texas and California.
Yeah. And Matt, the thing for me that I was actually having this discussion yesterday with somebody else in the industry is, so say they do get a favorable opinion on all of this, and say they do actually decide that no matter, this is no longer kind of gray area, or that we're trying to figure out what's going on, that yes, this is green light, go, then you actually can turn on, like full-fledged advertising stuff in California, in Texas, in the states that don't have anything, in the monopoly states and whatever, to give them extra options and stuff. This number, think about what this number would be next year if they were able to turn on the spigot of like actually really full-fledged a television ad for something, really going after and targeting dudes like me and stuff in these states like that. I can't even imagine what this, I'm being serious when I say this, and I'm not trying to like speak in hyperbole. It wouldn't surprise me if it doubled.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely. And you're right. I mean, right now that's what we're dealing with. We're not seeing the advertising. We're not seeing the big promotional pushes or whatever it may be, because nobody knows if this just goes away in a month.
Yeah.
There was supposed to be a roundtable this month, or I'm sorry, in March, that they were accepting public comment for in February. We still don't know exactly when that's going to happen. And basically from that roundtable, then there will be a decision made. Is this offering prediction markets on sports events, is that gaming of some sort? Because gaming is not allowed from the CFTC. And if it turns out that no, this is not defined as gaming under their rules, then it's on, man. It's on. Because all you have to do is look back at how many different ways people have tried to offer sports betting by entering those gray areas, right? You know, they find a loophole or they find something in the law and they say, oh, I could do something with that. And then there's headbutting with regulators, this and that, whatever. And so they do all that knowing that it's going to be difficult. Well, if this just turns on as legal, I honestly can't even imagine what the number may be.
Yeah, if Big Daddy federal government says it's okay.
Yeah.
I love the Big Daddy.
And Pat, like, you know, of note, and I think anybody that's in our bubble in the industry, Chalky hired Sarah Slane. If you guys are aware, like, I know Sarah from way back and hadn't talked to her in several years. Sarah, if you're listening, hey, how you doing? You can I'm still around. You know, whatever. But it's a deal where, you know, you look at this and somebody that's been around the block, obviously very familiar with the ins and outs of things, has worked very closely with government agencies, has worked very closely in every single aspect of trying to figure out how and where things fit and slot and all of that. And so I don't think that that is insignificant either, that they went out and got someone that they knows her stuff and can go in and navigate this the right way. Now, whether this the end result isn't on her shoulders, right, or whatever, of course that will all be whatever, but like they definitely went out and got someone that they feel, hey, certainly going to lead us in the right direction with this.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say they're giving themselves the best chance to succeed right now. And even Sarah herself told the Sports Business Journal it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah. And it sure is. I mean, all of this is. So
yeah, I mean, listen, it's something, guys, if you don't want to hear about this stuff anymore or whatever, we'll just give you a forewarning, but it's probably going to be on like every podcast. I mean, like basically everyone now, at least for the rest of this year, you know, until we get some sort of ruling on all this, because it is a very fascinating part of this industry of ours. And certainly something that 2 years ago, I wouldn't have thought. Yeah, it's just crazy, right? It's like it's just like how this all continues.
We
to
were
change
still talking
and
about
evolve.
DFS 2.0 2 years ago. You know?
I know. It's like all of this, like how this continues to evolve. And so, like, I wouldn't in my wildest dreams be like, oh, we're talking about Robinhood and Crypto.com, you know, and whatever, and all these stuffs. And I didn't even probably know what a Chalky was, you know, a couple of years ago. So with all of that, guys, you can go read all of the words that Matt and Pat and team over there do at LegalSportsReport.com. As we said, everything we do absolutely free. So we appreciate your support. And all you got to do is click a button. So if you're watching this over on the YouTube side of things, click that subscribe button. If you're over on the video, on the audio side of things, if you want to subscribe, if you want to rate and review, we do appreciate that as well. For Pat, for Matt, I'm also Matt. Talk to you guys next week.